This is from section 1.6. This should be a review from algebra. Okay, so a lot of this stuff you should have already seen, and it's just going to be refreshing it in your memory and rolling through those formulas again and getting acclimated once again to doing this and dealing with square roots and things like that. So let's go ahead and go. A side note before this starts, I'm probably going to divide this one into two. You need to make sure you watch them both. Okay, so we're watching them both 1 and 2 for homework on the next day. Okay, so here we go. Midpoint and distance in the coordinate plane, section 1.6. Vocabulary. The coordinate plane. We know what the coordinate plane is. There's a picture of it here. You don't necessarily need to write this down, but a couple of basics. We remember, of course, that the x-axis goes this way. The y-axis is the vertical one, that is the up and down one, so we're going to call that vertical. And we've got the quadrants, okay? And this forms a grid for us so we can easily find points that are on an XY pair. So important things about this: X is horizontal, Y is vertical. Okay, so the midpoint formula, here's something for you to write. And if we're finding the midpoint, before you write down this formula, okay, before you write down this formula, I want to point something out. We are going to use the midpoint, and if we think mid, we should be thinking about the middle. So it's going to be the average of two coordinates. It's going to be the average of two coordinates. Now, notice they've already done that. They've said it's the average of y2 and y1, average of x1 and x2. Okay? So when we find the average, here is what we're actually doing. We are taking point 1, x1, whatever the x coordinate of the first point is, and we're going to add that to this coordinate of the second point, the x coordinate, and we're going to divide by 2. Taking two things, adding them together and dividing by 2, that's the average of those two x points. We're going to do the same thing for y. And this is, notice I have this comma here because it's going to give us a point, xy, that is the average or the middle of these 2 points. So we're finding the middle of the y parts and the middle of the x parts, and we're putting them into one single set of parentheses to tell us that that's where the coordinate is. Okay? So midpoint is actually really not too bad. How do we apply this? We're going to find the coordinates of the midpoint of CD with endpoint C, -2. That's continued from the first line, so I'm just going to go ahead and put it here, -2, -1, and D is 4, 2. So let's see what we're going to do. First of all, I'm going to write down my formula. It's a good idea for you to always write down the formula before you start, because it's always going to give you something to go off of. And then if you'd like to, you can label these x2, y1, y2. Okay? Now I've got everything labeled. I'm just stacking them up and knocking them down. Here we go. -2 plus 4 over 2, comma, the average of my y coordinates would be -1 plus 2 over 2. Let's see what we end up with. -2 plus 4 would be 2 over 2, comma, and this is going to be 1 over 2. Now, notice what happened there. I have 1 and 1/2. This is okay. This is equal to the midpoint. All I did was find the average, because really this is just the average right here. It's the average of the 2 points. Okay, so that was example 1. That's using it. Go ahead and pause right here, and you do one. Try it. See if you can do it on your own. I know you think it's funny when I say pause and then I come right back, but try it. Seriously, try it. And then you can check your answer. It will give you instantaneous feedback. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to pause out here. You go ahead and pause it here, and then go ahead, write it, and when we come back, I will show you how to do it. Okay, we are back. Once again, finding the average. The average, x1 plus x2 over 2, comma, y1 plus y2 over 2. Once again, I'm going to label my points, x1, x2, y1, y2. And so we're going to go -2 plus 5 over 2. And we're going to have 3 plus negative 3 over 2. And what we've got here is 3 over 2, comma, 0 over 2. So we've got 3 over 2, comma, 0 as our midpoint. And that's okay. It is okay to end up with a fraction as one of our points because that's possible. Because we know the coordinate plane runs from 0 to infinity. We can have anything in between. A different sort of situation. We may be given the midpoint. So they're saying, hey, we already found the average for you. And we're going to give you one of the endpoints. You find the other endpoint. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to set up a formula. So M is the midpoint of AR. Okay? And M, so M is equal to 4 comma negative 3. Well, that 4 comma negative 3, I'm going to write this a little bit farther over. 4 comma negative 3 is going to be equal to our formula. Because remember, this is really just the average of x1 plus x2 over 2, comma y1 plus y2 over 2. Okay? And so we're going to set each of these pieces equal. I'm going to circle in red the first part that I'm going to set equal. This is the first equation. Okay? I'm even going to write it in red. So I'm going to say 2 plus some coordinate that we don't know over 2 is equal to, and that's going to be equal to 4. Okay? So I'm going to solve like normal. Multiply by 2 on both sides. So I've got 2 plus x is equal to 8. Subtract 2, x is equal to 6. That's the first part of our coordinate. So the coordinates of R is going to have the x coordinate of 6. Okay? How do we find the y coordinate? Well, here I go. I'm going to do this part in black. 3 and this one go together. So it's going to be negative 3 equals, I have y1. y1 comes from this 2 here. So 2 plus something y that we don't know. That's the coordinate of the other point. Over 2 is equal to negative 3. Multiply by 2 on both sides. So I've got negative 6 is equal to 2 plus y. Subtract 2. And I've got negative 8 is equal to y. Look how this ends up. So the coordinates of R, 6, comma, negative 8. So I set the half of the formula for y equal to the average y formula and plug in what I already knew, this 2 up here. I did the same thing for x. Seriously, guys. Do part B on your own. Try it, and I'll come back and I will do it, and we will be able to go through it together. Okay, we're back. S is the midpoint of RT. R has the coordinates 6, 1. S has the coordinates of negative 1, 1. So if S is the midpoint, we are saying negative 1, comma 1 is equal to x1 plus x2 over 2, comma, y1 plus y2 over 2. Okay? We're going to set each of the individual pieces equal. Okay? So I'm going to say negative 1 equals x1 plus x2. Now, where do I get this? R has the coordinate negative 6. So I'm going to say negative 6 plus one of the coordinates I don't know, x, over 2. Multiply by 2 on both sides. Negative 2 is equal to negative 6 plus x. I'll add 6 to both sides. So I've got 4 is equal to x. So my coordinate for the first one is 4. Now I'm going to go back here. I'm going to do my y part. These are the 3 things that I need. They're circled in yellow up here. All right? So I've got 1 equals y1, which is negative 1, plus the y that I don't know, over 2. It's the same formula. We're just setting the formula equal to one another. So 2 equals negative 1 plus y. We add 1. We add 1. So 3 is equal to y. Guys, do you see how I did that? Do you see how that works? Okay? So then I put my y up here, and I've got 4 comma 3. My midpoint goes together with my one endpoint to come up with the other endpoint of t equals 4 comma 3. Okay? You see how I did that? Go ahead. Pause it right here because we're cutting it out. We're going on to part 2. So this was part 1. I want you to go ahead and look for part 2 right now. That's going to be on the distance formula. All right, guys, go look for part 2.